How can the Apostle Paul say in Colossians 1 that he is filling up what is lacking in Christ's afflictions? This sounds like it could go heretically bad if not understood properly. Now, you've written an entire commentary on the book of Colossians and have page after page dissecting this. So I want to get to your take on it, but what are just, maybe give us a couple common ways that people would try to explain a passage that on its surface seems pretty troubling.
Yes, this is a passage that on the surface, as you mentioned, is a little cringeworthy because it sounds like what Jesus accomplished on the cross wasn't enough.
That's right.
It says, Paul says, he is filling up what is lacking in Christ's afflictions. Wow, what a statement to make. But it's not as difficult as it may appear.
Okay.
There has been, in the history of the interpretation of this text, so many different views. I've tried to catalog what I regard as the 9 most important.
Oh, 9.
There's more.
Wow.
But 9 of the most important views. We won't cover them all
Yeah, no,
here.
we don't need to.
But I have to begin with a confession, Sean.
Okay.
I changed my view on this as
That's
a result
good.
of doing research and writing on this commentary.
Okay.
So anyone that
So this
has
has been not long ago that you changed your position.
right, yeah, just in the recent years as I've
Interesting.
written this commentary. The most common view, and this is what I formerly held, is that there's something, we will call it the Jewish apocalyptic or eschatological view. That's a $10 expression for the idea, the simple idea that there's a set amount of suffering and affliction that believers must experience before Jesus returns.
Gotcha.
And their believers are identified with Christ, and we are his body. And there's a set amount of afflictions that we must endure, and then it'll trigger Christ's second coming. We see a little bit of this touched on in Revelation 6, 9 through 11, where the saints who are under the altar who have died in the persecution, the Lord, an angel tells them in a white robe, rest a little longer until the number of their fellow servants and their brothers should be complete, who were to be killed as they themselves had been. In other words, it's not going to happen. The Lord's not coming back immediately. There's a set amount of suffering that needs to take place before the Lord returns.
Okay.
So this has been probably the consensus view, the most common view of it. It's this Jewish, very Jewish idea that we see in here. And that was a view that I formerly held. So if you have the ESV Study Bible, you'll now want to scratch out my notes on Colossians 1:24.
Oh, your notes are actually in. Okay, fascinating. So tell us what the ESV Study Bible would say when they do an update.
If they do an update, what it will say now is this. In the passage, the larger context of Colossians 1:24, Paul refers to himself as a servant who has been entrusted with the gospel. And in fulfilling his role as the servant of the Lord, he's experiencing afflictions. And the word that's used of afflictions is the common word for the kind of persecution type of afflictions that would take place, not the passion of Christ in that sense. And so what I've tried to do now is I've tried to understand this better in light of the full Old Testament background, especially the book of Isaiah, because Isaiah talks about servant a lot. There are 4 servant songs in Isaiah, and we know one in particular because it's cited so much in the New Testament. That's Isaiah 52:53, and it speaks of he was pierced for our transgressions, he was crushed for our iniquities. Upon him was the chastisement that brought us peace, and by his wounds we're healed. And that's the servant of Yahweh, and obviously referring to Jesus Christ, fulfilling that. And it was completely adequate for our salvation. But there's ongoing work that the servant of Yahweh, the servant of the Lord, needs to fulfill. And repeatedly in Isaiah, the servant of the Lord would be a light to the Gentiles so they might be saved, a light to the nations so they may be saved. So Paul receives his commission on the Damascus Road. He sees himself now taking the mantle from Jesus. I am now the servant of Yahweh, and I am taking this as a light to the Gentiles. The gospel is a light to the Gentiles. In fulfilling that commission, he will suffer. The Lord told him in the Damascus Road, you will suffer in this way. He's suffering as he writes to the Colossians. He's in prison.
That's right, yeah.
In Rome at that time. He is suffering for the cause of the gospel. He is filling up what is lacking in the sufferings of Christ. What that means, again, is that as the servant of the Lord, as he undertakes the mission to take the gospel to the Gentiles, he is suffering. But he's doing so in union with Jesus, because Jesus says on the Damascus Road, Paul, why are you persecuting me? His connection with the church. And so that's kind of the direction that I go with this then.
That makes sense. Yeah.
Good.
No, I'm not remotely an expert on Colossians to tell you should take that position or not, but the way you described it makes a lot of sense. The concern people have is lacking in Christ's affliction. We immediately go towards salvation and view that salvifically. You're saying that's the wrong lens to look at this. What's lacking in Christ's affliction is, well, maybe he's forming our character. Maybe he's advancing the mission in the world through other afflictions. His afflictions alone didn't accomplish that, and they were never meant to. Is that fair? Would you agree with that?
Precisely. Yeah, you've nailed
precisely.
it.
Awesome.
You've nailed it there. And so Paul has died and passed off the scene. Nevertheless, the mission continues. And so I think what this can mean for us then is there may be persecution. There may be difficulties in fulfilling the mission of the Lord until the Lord returns. We're seeing many, many believers persecuted for the cause of Christ around the world. I could mention we've got Talbot grads that are imprisoned, suffering right now as a cause of Christ. In some way, they're filling up this role of the servant of the Lord insofar as they are experiencing persecution in conducting their mission.
I love that. Well done. And you too can come study with Dr. Clint Arnold and go deep on these kind of passages in Colossians, Ephesians, and more.